Hey everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! I wanted to talk to you all about this massive $10,000 tournament that happened over the weekend, hosted by Ursi. As always, she crushes it for the community, and this was no different. I think the biggest pocket tournament of all time. One of the bigger online Pokemon tournaments, I think, in general. Huge prize pool, so many players competing, and some really exciting decks that made it through. I want to go over some of the best decks from the event with all of you right now. And then, wait, what is this? What was that? Oh, I see what it was, I think. All right, let me take that again. Hey everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! I wanted to talk to you about this massive $10,000 tournament that happened over the weekend and some of the best decks to come out of it, especially some really interesting things that kind of came out of this tournament. Some things you would probably expect to do well, like Meowscarada Decidueye, things that you would not expect to do well, like possibly Gengar actually had some showings in the top 128. So let's get into it right here. First off, huge shout out to Ursi as always for putting on such amazing events for the community. Darkrai Giratina struggled. Other decks like Meowscarada Decidueye crushed it in this tournament, and there were some really exciting standouts. So I'm just going to go through a lot of it here in this video, talk to you about the decks, talk to you about why they did well and some of the matchups that performed well for them, and just some interesting stats across the board. Like I said, Darkrai Giratina, the most represented deck, and actually did not do very well. Solgaleo got absolutely crushed in this tournament. So did Greninja Giratina. So there's some really interesting standout decks. Let's just talk right away about the player who won the entire thing. Magnezone Oricorio with Shaman. This is from Narumi. Let's take a look at the deck right here. They have Magnemite, Magneton, Magnezone. I know a lot of people, when I play a Magnezone deck, some people will say, run rare candy, pull out a Magneton. And I think one thing that they're not realizing in a setup like that is you absolutely want Magneton. It's one of the most important cards in a deck like this. The stage 1 in this particular deck is why it's so good, right? Volt Charge is incredibly powerful. Then of course you have Oricorio, shuts down EXs, does decent damage, and running Shaman is a really interesting addition to a deck like this. It just stops all of that chip damage from kind of ruining everything for you. The rest of the deck, Professors, Pokeballs, Lily, one Lily that works for Magnezone, obviously, Mars, Cyrus, Guzma, a couple of Capes, and a Comms right there. The winning deck from the entire tournament. And if you take a look at some of the matchups for this deck, you can see it played, of course, if you make it to the end of a huge tournament like this, it played against a little bit of everything. Doing really well into Giratina Darkrai, which is kind of what it's set up to do, right? Is beat some of these EX Pokemon decks, but also doing very well into a lot of the Meowscaradas, having a good round into Garchomp, which can be a scary matchup for it. It ended up tying against the Togekiss deck, which we will talk about here in a little bit, and then winning all the way through to the end. Giratina Ninja, Meow, 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 Meow. Giratina Darkrai, another Magnezone Oricorio, and then finally a Meowscarada Decidueye to win the entire tournament. We'll take a look at that deck right now from Bixie right here, going 14-2-1. This deck is kind of a pretty standard Meowscarada Decidueye. It's got Sprigatito, Florgato, Meowscarada, Rowlet, Dartrix, Decidueye. I know some of these decks are choosing to drop Dartrix at times, but I think given how few Pokemon you have in your deck, you have one line of Decidueye, right? It's not crazy to keep Dartrix. We've got a couple of Ericas and a Lily, so the healing is out of control in a deck like this. Professors, Pokeballs, rare candies, of course, 2 Leaf Capes, and a red card. A lot of people using red card to break up your opponent's hand. And when they're looking to get something online with rare candy, you can break up their hand pretty aggressively with something like red card. And considering it is not a supporter like Professors or Mars, you can play it more aggressively after you've already drawn a Professors. So you're seeing a lot of Meowscarada decks look a little like this, and this one did very, very well in the tournament, making it all the way to second place. Now, a few other decks I really want to highlight right here that did very well. Charizard and Incineroar, I'm not surprised to see one get very deep into the tournament. I think a big reason for that, we're going to take a look at the deck here really quick. You've got Charmander, both Charmanders, a Charmeleon and a Charizard, and you have one Litten Incineroar. So the plan is definitely The rare candy is absolutely necessary on Incineroar. You can't get there without it. And you do have a Charizard line that lets you use Charmeleon, so you can deal with things that are trying to KO your EX Pokemon. The rest of it, 2 Lilies for your Stage 2s, a red Iono, rare candy, Pokeball, a red card, Pokemon Communication, and a giant cape. So if you take a look at some of the matchups here, it's actually pretty interesting. With so many Meowscarada Decidueyes in the tournament, this deck just cruised right through it. And of course, you know, going into a metal deck, it just really dominates something like Solgaleo. So it had a great time throughout this tournament, making it all the way to the top 16 and getting taken down by a Giratina Greninja deck. Moving a little forward into the tournament, I do want to talk about kind of the lone Solgaleo player, the Andy Ads, who made it to top 128 with Solgaleo. Solgaleo Skarmory was the deck. While this deck does really well on ladder, it seems like the tournaments just absolutely beat up Solgaleo this weekend. So 2 Solgaleos, 1 Cosmoem, 2 Cosmogs, 2 Skarmories, of course. With 2 Skarmories, you're definitely going to want to run at least 4 tools in your decks. Some people might run more than 4 tools, but I don't know if that's entirely necessary. I think 4 is a really solid amount. You will likely get it in your first hand. Barb, Rocky Helm, Cape. It's got Cyrus, Sabrina, Guzma, Pokeballs, Professors, and Rare Candies. A decent deck, but again, Solgaleo really struggling in the tournament this weekend. I think Decidueye Meowscarada definitely had something to do with that, right? Now, I want to talk to you about some of the most exciting decks. And if you were paying attention to the tournament at all, you may have seen some of these. This was Edgy Fellows Gengar Tapu Lele, which is just such a cool deck. And it's probably not the Gengar you would expect, right? This is that 2 energy Gengar that puts your opponent to sleep. A really cool deck right here. First off, Tapu Lele is crazy. So Tapu Lele allows you to do damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon that has energy on it. And it does 20 damage for each energy attached. It's such an insane bench sniper. You have the Psychic Oricorio here that performs kind of like the Marshadow from Mythical Island. You have a Ghastly and a Gengar. No middle evolution right here, no Haunter in this deck. So you're using both of the rare candies for the Gengar. And the nice thing here is 1 energy on Ghastly, rare candy, 2 energy on Gengar, and now you're kind of attacking similarly to a Wigglytuff EX, right? It requires 1 less energy. It's kind of crazy when you compare the cards, right? Considering what rare candy gives you now. It is 1 less energy, and it does 10 less damage, and it still guarantees your opponents asleep. Now, of course, running into Arceus or something, it can be kind of brutal. But in general, sleep is a great condition. 50-50, they won't be able to do anything. Of course, there are counters to that, like Pokemon Center Lady and other things that can remove cards from the active spot, but very powerful. You've got Professors, Iono, a Geo in this deck, Lily, Cyrus, Guzma, Pokeballs, Rare Candies, Red Card, and Giant Cape. Red Card having a bit of a red card renaissance in this tournament, feeling a little like Genetic Apex when we would see it run more often competitively. And again, red card is just really there to break up your opponent's hand and stop them from rare candying a Pokemon. You can kind of tell what your opponents are playing towards, and if they have a certain amount of cards in their hand, you could just, all right, I'm throwing those back into your deck and make it a little harder for you to find what you're looking for. So a really cool deck from Edgy Fellow right here. I can't remember what it went down to. Was it a Giratina that it ended up losing to? No, it was the Solgaleo, sorry, that it ended up losing to right here. So it did very well throughout the tournament, beating some kind of like earlier decks that you probably wouldn't see later, like Dragonite or Giratina Rayquaza, but then moving into a lot of meta decks. Giratina Darkrai giving it a little trouble. Arceus Crobat, no surprise, giving it trouble. Arceus Crobat's just a really dang good deck, and it's especially hard for anything with status conditions, right? And then finally going down in top 32, really cool deck. We had another one here. Let me find the other Gengar really quick. I think it was Nuggy who ran the other Gengar. No, Hydra Pika was the one I wanted to show here. Hydra Pika going 9-2 in the tournament. So this is a different version of it, right? This does have that Haunter. It has one, it has the Haunter. It has 1 less Tapu Lele, but it still has those 2 Gengars right there. We've got the rare candy, a Barb, a Rocky Helm, another red card. This one has 2 lilies, so really focusing on making sure that you can heal up the Gengar, as well as a Cyrus. Really cool decks right here. This one went down earlier in the tournament. It went down to a Giratina Greninja. Obviously a very strong deck, and when Giratina Greninja gets online, it's really hard to take this deck. Like, it starts, you get Greninja on its like second turn, you've been powering Giratina the whole time. A very, very strong deck. Let's take a look at some of these other ones that did well that I think are just really cool to look at. This was one I thought was interesting when I saw it. So this is Arceus Crobat, but just with the additional Darkrai. And that did pretty well in the tournament too. This is going to be very similar to what you see with a lot of these Arceus decks. However, it's got basic Arceuses, so you end up having 3 Arceus in this deck, and a Darkrai. You're running Dark Energy here. So this is foregoing Carnivine and its pressure. You have the ability now to attack with Crobat, which can be very powerful, right? 1 Dark Energy for 50 damage, and you can power Darkrai on the bench. Just gives you some different options. This deck has a Mars, Iono, Leaf, an Illima. Illima with Arceus feels incredibly good. Especially like baby Arceus right here, 120 HP as a basic. You're probably not going to power it up, but you're using it for that Arceus link, while at the same time able to pull it out of the active spot with Illima. Got rare candy, comms, a lot of cool stuff in this deck. This deck ended up, I didn't see which one this went down to. This went down to a Meowscarada Decidueye. Meowscarada Decidueye, very, very powerful deck. Really hard to deal with in this tournament. There was another really cool one that I know people are going to be excited for. I was definitely excited to see it. And that was Tamahagane. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong. Togekiss Tapu Lele. So obviously, you're not running EXs in this deck at all. And there are a lot of decks right now that aren't running EXs doing very well, right? Togepi, 1 Togetic, 2 Togekiss, couple Tapu Leles, and Oricorio. Red card, Mars, Cyrus, Guzma, Cynthia, and a couple of rare candies. So they only have 1 Cynthia here. But the nice thing about this, right, is it's kind of similar to that Gengar. If you have Togepi out with 1 energy, you rare candy into Togekiss, you're immediately swinging for 60. Next turn, you're swinging for 120, possibly 170 if you have your Cynthia. And then because you're attacking so much in that active spot early, something like Guzma is nice to deal with, like Rocky Helms and Poison Barbs and things like that. So this was a really cool deck to see get pretty deep into the tournament. This deck ended up going down to Giratina Greninja. A ton of Giratina Greninja in the tournament, also running into the tournament victor right here in Magnezone Oricorio and having some real trouble. There's another cool deck I wanted to talk about. There's Charizard Turtonator, but I really wanted to talk about Infernape Turtonator because I hadn't seen, like, I've seen a couple people try to make this deck work. This is Pedra Kill. I feel like I've seen this in some tournaments here, but the cool thing about this, you've got Chimchar, Monferno, Infernape, and Turtonator. Obviously, you have rare candies, and you have Kiawe. So with Infernape having a 0 retreat cost, you can easily get back into Turt, right? If you start active Infernape, you get 140 damage, you lose all of your energy, and then you can bring Turtonator in. And the nice thing is, when you lose all your energy on Infernape, it's actually not super stressful because you either have the ability to attack with Turt, or you could use Kiawe on Turtonator, generate energy, and then put energy on the bench for Infernape. That way you never have to worry about continuing to power Turtonator. Professors, red card, Sabrina, Lily, Guzma, a couple of rare candies. So, sorry, red and a red card. Pretty exciting deck, and we have a similar version of that here with Charizard from Cap Forgery, or 40, sorry. This deck, Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard with a Turtonator. So there are some great reasons to play this over something like Incineroar, which also did well in the tournament, and that, of course, is it plays better into Oricorio, and it gives you a single point that you can throw away. Sometimes in some of your EX decks, it's a little tough if you're not able to give up single points. So in this, you could give up 2 Turtonators or a Turtonator and a Charmander if things don't start the way you want, and you still have the ability to fight with your EX Pokemon, Charizard right here. Another couple cool decks, Wizzy, Meowscarada, Beedrill, and you gotta love Beedrill. I mean, I was hoping we'd see some of it moving into this set. You never know, like, what's going to stick around. I loved Meow B last set. So this has the Sprigatito, Florgato, Meowscarada, 1 Weedle, And then you either have a choice of Beedrill EX or Beedrill right here, right? You don't have comms or anything like that in this deck, but of course, Sprigatito's whole job is to dig through your deck and find these so you can make a decision on how you want to play it. We've got Professors, Erica, Sabrina, Cyrus, Pokeball, Rare Candy, and Leaf Capes. This deck did pretty well in the tournament. Ended up going down to a Meowscarada Decidueye in top 32. Obviously, Meow Decidueye just really having a weekend, which is very, very cool. We had another Gengar deck. Here it is. We had Nuggy D's Gengar deck. This deck has a lot going on with it, right? But this went pretty deep into the tournament. They went 8-3, which is very cool. So this is Ghastly Haunter. It has Gengar EX, Gengar from Genetic Apex, as well as the Gengar. I'm blanking on what set this came from, but it was more recent, right? I don't think it was Space Time Smackdown, but now I'm forgetting. And it has the Sleep Gengar here, as well as a Giratina EX, a Tapu Lele, and a lot of other options right here. We have X-Speed, Rare Candy, Pokemon Comms, Dawn, Mars, Lily, Cyrus, Professor, just a ton of different options here. And depending on what you're running into, you can decide whether or not you're playing something like Gengar EX. You could play the 1 energy Gengar that stops your opponents from using supporters, or the 2 energy Gengar, allowing you to put your opponents to sleep right here. This deck ended up being taken down by Giratina Greninja. A Giratina Greninja, a sniper, taking down a ton of decks in this tournament. Here was another cool one that I wanted to highlight, which was Giratina Banette. Banette's just super fun. So, Shuppet, Bennett, Tapu Lele, and Giratina. Professors, 2 Team Rocket Grunts because it's so unbelievably mean. Sabrina, Cyrus, Guzma, Leaf, Pokemon Center Lady, Pokeball, and Giant Cape. This is just a really cool one because I think Bennett's a super fun card right here. And then finally, I saw a Solgaleo Snorlax that I thought was pretty cool. Taking a look at this right here, it's just Cosmog, Solgaleo, Snorlax. You have a couple of berries, Pokemon Center Lady, Cyrus, Red, Rare Candies, Pokeballs, a red card, and 2 Rocky Helms. Again, if you just kind of take a look at like the big picture from the tournament, Darkrai Giratina stocks are down, Solgaleo stonks way down, and if you take a look at something like Meowscarada Decidueye, that deck absolutely crushing it over the weekend. There's some other cool decks that popped up in this tournament, but I didn't get a chance to cast it or anything like that. I was hoping I would get to hop on with Ursi, but I just was not able to do anything this weekend. So I wanted to go over some of the best decks from this big $10,000 tournament. A lot of cool stuff right here. There are also some other outliers that I think are fun to take a look at. But yeah, Magnezone Oricorio taking down the entire thing, and Meowscarada Decidueye just looking unbelievably good. All right, everybody. Thank you all for watching. Thank you for listening. I love you guys. I'll see y'all next time. We did it. Yeah, we did.